All right, everybody, I'm glad you're sticking with us. I love this process of reinvention. We've talked about the different tools that she uses. Now, let's listen to another case study that she has. And now that you've seen some of the tools and elements, or as we call the magic swords at play, now you've seen us and talked and you've heard us analyze them, watch them as they play out as she tells this story. Here she goes.
Wendy, we just love hearing the examples, the case study. Do you have another one to share?
This one's this is a great one. So someone came to me. This is because of my entertainment background. I work with a lot of people in that industry. And a woman came to me and she had been writing for a YouTube channel, but wanted to really bust out into something bigger. And so together we worked on that. She did have to support her family. She had a young toddler and did get a job working on another YouTube channel. But this woman would get up first thing in the morning. She would write. She had an idea for a screenplay, and she would write in the morning. She would commute. This is pre-COVID. She would take the long commute to her job. She'd come home, deal with her family. Once her toddler was in bed, she'd write at night, and she was able to write a screenplay that was bought by a major streaming service, and it launched her career. So that was a great experience, and she was successful. And then a few years later, she came back to me and said, "I don't like this industry anymore. I don't want to do it anymore." And so we started exploring what she wanted to do next. You know, it's not often that people want to get out of entertainment. Most people want to get in, especially someone who'd had a successful career like hers, but it just wasn't hitting for her. So we reestablished her priorities. What were the things that were most important? Her North Star, her must-haves, her deal breakers. And ultimately, she decided that she wanted to go back to school to become a therapist. And I was just in touch with her recently, and she just graduated. She showed me her diploma, and she's on her way to this completely different career.
That is fantastic. Of her priorities, because I think you mentioned that she had a young child, or was family a part of it? Is that perhaps why the entertainment industry, moving into something, going back to school?
This is a thread that is through so many of my clients who are in a job and are thinking about making a change, is they don't feel valued. And she didn't feel valued at work, and it was just put all this effort in, and she didn't feel valued. And again, that's a common thread. And when people don't feel valued and acknowledged, it's really hard to keep going.
No, it's true. You want to feel like you're a valuable part of the organization. Well, she made a big switch, and it's once again a reinvention, a transformation that doesn't sound like it took too long for her to figure out direction, and I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, she's a really motivated person, and when often I tell parts of her story, because some people say they don't have enough time, and we talked about having small wins, and this was a woman who was working full time, had a small child. She was the breadwinner for the family, and yet she was able to carve out the time to follow her dream, whether it was going back to school, whether it was writing a screenplay. And even when she was in school for her master's to become a therapist, she was writing in between because she needed to bring money in. So I like to, again, tell her story as a way to show people that they can carve out time, even in a very busy life with family obligations, if they have the commitment. If they have the commitment and breaking it down into small pieces to get it done.
Right. If it's a priority, then you make time.
Yeah, and you can do a lot, even in small amounts of time. You can do a lot if you commit and you're focused during the time that you have.
Right. Wendy, you mentioned the North Star, and maybe you could just give your definition of the North Star.
When I was talking about people want to feel valued at work, that's a common thread. And often people come to me wanting to have more impact in their work. But whatever it is, sometimes it's flexibility, sometimes it's compensation, sometimes it's title, sometimes these days where so many people are going back to having to go back to the office, sometimes it's being able to work remotely. Sometimes it's being able to be in a company whose mission you really admire. So it really varies, and I certainly don't bring an agenda to it. My goal, my role is to help bring it out so people understand that what their priorities are and have that be the guiding light as they're considering different possibilities. Now life isn't a fantasy, and so it's not like you might have to be flexible with some of those things depending on what you end up coming up with. But it's good to have this basis of knowing these are the things I really want to have. These are my North Star. These are what this is what's going to guide me as I explore different opportunities.
Sounds like priorities and values go hand in hand. Well,
Yeah,
Wendy, thank you for sharing that and for breaking it down for us.
my pleasure.
Deirdre, that was a fantastic conversation. So, in that story arc, what did you see going on in that moment?
Well, first of all, the priorities and what you want to take forward, and how this woman really made a transition because she saw that she wasn't being valued. And that was a priority. And she found a path to value and commitment she made, and that she could get it done. I'm thinking, Todd, that a lot of the time that we were talking about also has to do with our ability to say no to what isn't a priority, and that certainly must help too.
And I think that's the value of the clarity that comes from a good coaching session is sometimes you just kind of put up with things, but until you clarify that this is the actual obstacle, now you know what you need to guard against or you want to move away from. And the coaching process I saw, she really identified what really mattered. It mattered to her that she felt valued. Therefore, the places where she doesn't feel valued, it's like a magnet. She's going to push away from that as well. So that North Star she can pull towards what that the other element that she wants to become. What else did you notice Wendy doing or the discoveries that took place in that case study?
Well, I think it's also she drew out that this woman was successful. And just because you're successful in an industry doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy. So sometimes you do have to step back to say, what is the most meaningful for me? But Todd, you just said something that's important too, having the clarity. And as you're moving through priorities, and I just hope everybody out there remembers that self-care through this process should be a huge priority, because that's what keeps you clear minded and able to share with your coach so that the best possible outcome can happen.
Talk to me about how you define the North Star, how you help someone do that.
So, North Star is exactly as Wendy said, it's those priorities and values that we live by. It's something you don't compromise. I usually talk about values and North Star in terms of who we are and how we want to see ourselves at the end of the day. We spend a lifetime of moments sharing and doing things and living our lives. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to hold your head up high and know that you're true to your values. So that's how I define the North Star, is that I can sleep at night because I know I'm true to my values and who I am.
Deirdre, I absolutely love that. And thank you so much. Those interviews were absolutely fantastic. You know, and now as I close the show, I really want to bring light to what she uncovered a limiting belief. She uncovered something that this person was believing that was holding her back. And so as we close the show, I just want to bring attention to that. What might you be believing in this moment? The moment of a possible reinvention that's closing the doors to what might be possible. What might you be believing that's absolutely and accidentally holding you back. She identified, look at the links that she was willing to go to once she recognized what was really important to her. Once she recognized, hey, it's important to me to feel valued. It's important to me to really to pursue a different area, and look at the links that what felt like a limit before, she pushed beyond that envelope, working at night, working in between here, getting up early in the morning, pushing herself beyond what typically she would have, because the coach enabled her to move past the limiting belief, get clarity on what really mattered, get a clear picture. What's possible? Who do I really want to be? And now, what does it take for me to get there? This is what you're going to see on Communication Makeover. We're going to go through these scenarios and case studies, and oftentimes you'll see us actually do live coaching, Deirdre and I, with a person on either their communication message or the direction that they're actually going. We're going to enjoy together watching coaching in its purest form and watching it bring about the breakthrough that it has the power to transform. So stick with us each week. We're going to love bringing you these stories. And so we'll see you next week, this same time, where we find another breakthrough to allow coaching to bust those doors wide open. We'll see you next week.